Everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Tobi Ojekunle. He's an engineer in the renewable energy industry, and he's got a passion for self improvement and personal development. So, he started the Mirror Talk podcast. I'm super excited about this because he's got a fascinating background and perspective. So, with that, welcome, Tobi, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you so much, Brett, for having me on your show. I really appreciate the privilege and the opportunity to be here right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I think there's so many things that I want to ask you about, but I do actually want to start off a little bit with your background. So you grew up in Nigeria and then you moved to Germany. Can you give us a sense of what your childhood was like and what that was all about?
Oh yes, yes, I could. Yeah, I would love to share that. I mean, I have to think back a little bit. That's been a long time. I left home. I left home around. I guess I left Nigeria 11 years ago because I wanted to study electrical engineering and information technology. So, to my background, I grew up in a family of seven, and I also grew up with my cousins in the same household. So it was like a big house, basically, with my siblings, four of them, my parents, and some of my cousins and my aunties, living with us. It was like a very bubbling, lively place, basically. Yeah. So I grew up in that setting also with, in a Christian background, going to church. I was on a show some days ago, and I was asked the same question, and I thought about it. I was like, yeah, it feels like we're going to church every day because we go to church on Sundays, you go to church on Tuesdays for Bible studies, you have the house fellowships on Thursday, and then sometimes you have vigils on Friday, and then you have my parents and my mom and some of my siblings were in the choir, so they go for choir practice on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. On Sundays you're back to church again. So like it's like basically church, school, and being at home and doing things. That's my life growing up. Basically, if I could sum it up. Yeah, but at the age of 18, I was done with high school already, and I was looking into college. At the age of 18, I already spent a year in the college in Nigeria, but there was something deep down inside of me right from my teenage days where I thought about, moving abroad to get a better education, get better opportunities, because I've always been reading and I found out that it's actually get more opportunities when you're abroad than when you're back at home in Nigeria, unfortunately. And that led me to, pursuing that dream of, traveling out to study. And yeah, at the age of 19, 4 days after I clocked 19, I left the country because I got admission in Germany here.
Wow. Well, first of all, I mean, that's amazing. But I have to say, look, even growing up in the United States where everyone's always like, oh, it's opportunity, opportunity. I have a son who is a senior in college and he's abroad. He's in Scotland.
Oh,
And,
nice.
one of the things I have to say that's really remarkable about it, and I'd be curious to see your thoughts on this too, is it broadened his perspective.
Hmm.
Because coming from where he came from, a lot of the people that he knows went to school locally here in the US. And even if they're, 1,000 miles away,
Hmm.
they're still in the United States. So there's those same cultural elements. A lot of the things are the same. When you go to a different country, you're going to experience things that are totally different. And when my son went to Scotland for the first time, he had been abroad before once, but he never had lived there, certainly not on his own. And initially it was a bit of a shock,
Hmm.
but he adjusted to it, and then he had the opportunity to be able to travel, see a lot more of the world, and he met a network of people and friends from all over the world. So it's really expanded his horizons and his sort of perspective in that way. Did you find the same thing from moving like that?
Yes, I mean, I can totally relate to that. When you were sharing about your son right now, I just remembered when I was quite young, I think maybe 11 or younger. I'll make sketches of beautiful things like technological things that I think would be great innovations in the world, back at home. And I'll show my dad, and he'll be like, "Oh, okay, oh, it would be nice for you to travel out, to expand your horizon, to learn new things." And then me moving to Germany, I found out that most of those things already existed like years ago. Like, So I don't want to, what I'm trying to drive out is that sometimes where you are could limit what you believe in, how broad you can dream, how big you can dream. So traveling out, meeting new people, networking with people from different ethnicity, culture, backgrounds helps you to think in a different way. It restructures your mind and helps you to dream bigger. Like if you grew up, like this illustration of a fish growing up in a pond and a fish in an ocean, basically. So I think I grew up in a bubble, and all I could think about was, oh, I wish we could make this pond a very big ocean without knowing that it exists already, basically. Yeah, and then getting into the ocean, then you start to have other dreams, bigger dreams, until you move on to the next horizon where you could see even wider, farther, and then it helps you become, a better being.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I have to say, even beyond the being young, as for me, I have been an entrepreneur for 17 years, and I have to say, a lot of the things that I've done have been sort of solo, right? We live in an age now where technology connects us in a way that you don't necessarily need a big office or employees and staff, and you can outsource a lot, and you can work with people remotely. So for 17 years, I did that. And one of the things that I regret the most, believe it or not, is that I didn't focus enough on building relationships. Because when I have an opportunity to talk with other people, connect with other people on a deeper level, it definitely changes your frame of reference. And it's one of the reasons I do this podcast. I love, having you on. I'm going to learn new things. Having somebody else on, I'm learning new things all the time. And I think it's 100% so valuable to connect with other people and expand our frame of reference. So let me ask you, what got you interested in electrical engineering and information technology? Why those two fields did you choose to study?
Oh yeah, it was my, how I said, my curiosity and passion for just technology in general. Like, I won't say I'm not a lazy person, but I love to make life easier for myself. So I was looking into, making things much more automated, processes more automated. And I was like, okay, what can I study in order to learn how to automate processes? And that was for me, electrical engineering and information technology. So, programming, writing codes to make things faster. And also, one thing that inspired me to study electrical engineering and also to move to Germany was my father bought a Mercedes Benz and he brought it home. And I was like, oh, this car looks so beautiful. I would like to know where the car is from. I think we opened the bonnet and we saw made in Germany. I was like, oh, I would love to go to Germany. I would love to learn how these people made these kind of things. How did they come up with this idea to make a car that looks this beautiful? And then later down the line, you get to find out, oh, BMW is also from Germany. Volkswagen is also from Germany. Like big brands are also from Germany. Siemens is also from Germany. So like, wow. I mean, I would love to be in that kind of circle where people come up with ideas, make things out of nothing, and that was what made me, move to Germany and also wanted to study electrical engineering and IT.
That's amazing, and it is funny how you mentioned, right, you see made in Germany and it sort of plants the seed, and then you start thinking about it and it comes back later in life for something else that you're doing. My wife and I, when we got married a long time ago, we honeymooned in Fiji.
Oh,
And one of the reasons we went to Fiji was because, believe it or not, I had seen a movie and they mentioned Fiji in it. And at the time, there was no real internet. So when you
mm,
thought about places that were far away, you only knew what you knew from either an encyclopedia or television shows. You couldn't just look stuff up and see photos and video walkthroughs of every street in the country or whatever, like you
that's true.
can now. And so it
Mm.
was just sort of this thing that I saw it, I heard it somewhere, and it planted that seed in my head. And I was like, that it just sounds so tropical and amazing. I think I'd like to go. And that's really, I mean, the reason there was no other reason. It was something that was planted early and then it just came back up later. But um, so I know now, right, you also have a real passion for self-improvement and personal development. What got you interested in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so much interested in that because growing up, from looking at my father and my mom, also, I saw the way that they really, put, I mean, all their energy and their strength into building us up, giving us the best of the best that we could get, and that we could afford also. And, also learning from their own personal stories, like the struggles my mother had to go through, the struggles my father had to go through to become who they are today. That's, planted the seed into me to also always want to pursue self-improvement, to always be better than how I was yesterday. And, leading also to make me, starting the podcast, a lot of things I learned growing up, I learned them from speaking with people. Like my father, whenever he comes home from his travels, sits with you and talk for hours, sharing stories from his past, from his childhood days, and then you share some lessons with you. My mom does the same thing too. People around in the community do the same thing too. So at a point in my life when I was in Germany, started working already, I started to miss those kind of conversations. And I was like, something is missing. Like I'm not getting those inputs anymore. Like, okay, I'm growing in my career, but I'm not like maybe growing in other areas of my life because I'm not getting all those, indirect instructions from people's stories, indirect instructions from people's, just people just, sitting with you and chatting with you basically. So yeah, that's what's, planted the seed into me of, going into self-improvement and also starting a podcast that is in that line also.
Yeah, it is interesting how you share that because I can say my family, we had family dinners and stuff, but we didn't have a community in the sense where there was that sharing of information like that. And I was always a little jealous about that when I see others people's stories about it because I think there's something amazing about it. I would drive through neighborhoods sometimes and I would see just a bunch of people out on a stoop somewhere talking. And I'm thinking to myself, there's so much richness in
Mm,
that sharing of information and experience.
yeah,
And whether or not we're talking to our kids or whether or not we're talking to our parents or our friends or whatever, we gain a lot through the experience that other people have when they're able to share it. So it's great that you were able to have that such a deep connection that way with your family. And I think, you said in the very beginning, right? Church was a really big part of what you were doing.
yeah,
You had all these customs and these things that you did as a family and as a unit all the time. And I think there's a tendency nowadays, especially where we are, for everybody to just be going their own way and doing everything at 100 miles an hour. And I
true.
think sometimes we miss that. Like there's value and richness and meaning in all of that. And so, I think that's great that you were able to get those experiences. So, one of the things that I know you're really big on is pausing, taking breaks, and reflecting. And I know people that are listening are going to be screaming about that because most people are thinking, I got to go faster, I got to go longer, I got to work harder. So,
Yeah.
what is it about that? Why do you think we should be doing that? And how does that benefit us?
Yeah, I think some days ago I was telling myself, I guess pause, take a break, reflect on life. Well, it's not meant for any other person but for me myself because it's something I am working on every day. Um, like if anyone says, yeah, it's supposed to be going faster, I'm also on that lane. So I'm like, yeah, let's make it faster, let's do things faster, let's be efficient, and let's make things work faster. But I got to a point in my life where I noticed that you end up making a lot of mistakes and just rolling from mistakes into mistakes if you don't take that time to deliberately, intentionally stop, to reflect on your journey so far, analyze what you've done so far, what has worked for you, what has not worked for you, and take those lessons to improve the next step that you take. And intentionally taking pauses on in one's journey in life helps you to improve exponentially because you keep on learning from the past experience and you use the lessons learned to make a better decision for the next step instead of just running and just growing and running, and you end up not making so much progress at the end of the day. Like you cover a lot of distance, but you don't go so far or so high as you would ever want to. And that's what where that came from, and that's how I'm encouraging other people also to do that too. To also it helps you to save a lot of time, I would say, because you could keep on running, and in 10 years' time you look back and say, "Oh, I didn't make so much progress like I wanted to." But if you intentionally take time to to stop, you could achieve what you achieved in 10 years, in 5 years, because you are always, looking back and making the right steps, taking the right step, making the right decisions, and that way you make bigger progress, faster in a shorter period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the power of reflection is really strong. And I do think that we have a tendency nowadays to do a lot less thinking than we ever did, because I remember, so I'm dating myself a little bit, it makes me feel old, but when I was a kid, right, we had phones that had a cord, and there was one phone in the house. Everyone didn't have a cell phone.
Mm,
Computers were in their infancy. There was no internet. TV was only on some hours a day, and there were only six channels. And so the thing about it is, it forced you to do things where you had to entertain yourself, where you had to be, your own voice in your head. So you did a lot of thinking, you did a lot of interacting, because that's what you did. You got on your bike and you rode around with your friends and you went and played sports, because there wasn't always some kind of media or video game or some sort of instant gratification right in front of you.
mm,
And I think the important lesson from all of that is, as time has evolved and we've gotten to this point, we do get to a point now where we literally can go through a day. We shouldn't, but we can go through a day where we do almost no actual thinking, because from the minute we get up, we have our job or we have whatever we got to do. So we're going to go, we're going to do that. Then if we put on the TV, if we listen to the radio on the way to work, the radio on the way back, then, we put on the TV, then we do this, then we do, we're constantly bombarded by things that are occupying our mind, but we aren't taking that time to think and reflect. And to your point, I know sometimes I've been trying to do something so hard and working so hard at it. And when I stopped and sort of not gave up, but I just took a break and said, you know what? I'm going to stop trying to push it so hard. The answer would pop into my head,
mm.
because I could then have that space for my mind to work on it, as
Yeah.
opposed to always being going. So I love that idea. And I do think it's something we all need to be doing a lot more than we do. And I think that is one reason you're seeing a big push for more meditation nowadays, because people are
Mm,
recognizing the value in slowing down.
yeah.
And sometimes you get to where you're going faster by going slower, which is a little
Exactly.
ironic, but spot on. So,
Yeah.
all right. So your podcast, Mirror Talks. I want to get into that, but what is a mirror talk first?
Yeah. So mirror talk for me is like, the conversation that you have with yourself. I mean, of course, on the podcast we have the dialogues, like I have guests on the show. But mirror talk, the idea of mirror talk came to me when at a point in my life, actually always standing in front of the mirror and speaking the truth to myself, the very, very plain, undiluted truth to myself. And that translated into the podcast because I want every conversation that we have on the podcast and everyone who listens to those conversations to be able to have the reflection of it in their lives, basically, to be able to see, oh, these are the things that I could maybe change. These are the honest truths that no one will tell me, but I'm hearing directly from this conversation. And also, yeah, I mean, just being able to see yourself, through people's life, through people's experiences, and be able to see what you have to fix. Most times when we stand in front of the mirror, we're able to see our faces better, or our body, if it's a full mirror, to be able to see, okay, what do I have to fix in my outfits? What do I have to fix on my face? And how can I improve my appearance, for example? And I believe there are a lot of conversations that helps us also to know or hint us in directions in which we could improve one thing or the other in our lives also. So that's where mirror talk came from.
Cool. It's a great idea, and it's something anybody can easily relate to. As soon as you hear the word, you're like, I think I know where he's going with this. I want to get some clarification, but I think I understand.
Mm.
A lot of us, I think nowadays, we're just really hard on ourselves, right? And we can certainly use some encouragement and to feel better about ourselves and what we're doing. So, how can we start a habit of positive mirror talks for ourselves?
Oh yes, the best thing to do, or the first thing to do, is actually to accept yourself, to embrace yourself for who you are. I mean, that also involves, loving yourself for who you are. Like, No one is perfect, and there's also beauty in imperfection. Embrace those flaws, embrace those mistakes you've made in the past. Treat yourself like you treat a friend, and or you treat like a loved one. You wouldn't want to hurt them for any reason. You wouldn't want to judge them, I hope, for any reason. And I believe that's how you should treat yourself also. I've been putting that in place. Positive mirror talk, is like, speaking words into your life. Like, maybe or you go back to the mirror, you stand in front of the mirror and you just, appreciating who you are. Or I love your blue eyes. I hope it's blue eyes. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure of your color of your eyes. Love your
Yeah,
blue
yeah,
eye. Or
definitely.
yeah. And okay. I'm a successful person. I can do this. I can achieve all things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's one thing I use from the Bible, all the time. Those positive affirmations. Speaking words, because I believe words have great power. And once you can plant those words from your own tongue into your life, it could turn things around for you. I've experienced it a lot of times where actually, I grew up for a long time feeling so, feeling so ugly, feeling so unattractive, and honestly, I became very intentional about appreciating parts of my body that people used to make fun of, basically in the past, and I don't know. I just thought about it a while back, and I was like, people started, giving me compliments for those things that people used to insult me on, and things in between was appreciating, myself for, like, oh, I love my ears. They're small, but I love them. They fit perfectly to my body, to my head. My big head is wonderful. It's just the right size for my body. Things like that. Yeah. I mean, so having those kind of positive talk with myself helped me to also appreciate myself and helped me in the way I carry myself, basically. Like, it helps me to get rid of, low self-esteem. It helped me to get rid of, helped me to improve my self-confidence also, basically. Like, okay, I know in the past people make fun of, maybe the way I talk and the way I sound. And I was like, oh, I love the way I sound, I love the way I talk. And now I get compliment of, oh, my voice being soothing, my voice being, they love listening to my voice. I'm like, oh, okay. You see, it's a big blessing to notice that shift, after feeling less than enough for things that people make fun of or just, laugh at, and then going through that process of talking, having those positive mirror talk about them with yourself, and then seeing the results at the end. Like, oh, okay, my voice, maybe something happened in between, or maybe it's the very same voice, but something has happened after having those positive mirror talk, and now I am sounding better, or people appreciate the way I sound, for example. So that's just the benefit. I mean, just to sum it up a little bit, that's the benefit of having mirror talk, and I believe it's important for us to do that also, to boost our confidence, to boost our self-esteem, to help us also on our journey to stay focused. Also, it helps us to to remain on the path that we want for ourselves.
I love that idea. I love that advice, and I also think it's super important, to do it to a point where it becomes a habit. I know for myself, if I've experienced those kinds of things, sometimes initially it feels a little weird, because you're not used to hearing nice things or saying
Yeah,
nice things to yourself.
yeah.
But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the better it gets. And then the more you start to internalize those beliefs.
Hmm.
So it's about creating that as a habit so that eventually you change your entire view of yourself and that trait or whatever it is. And so I'll tell you a story. As a kid, I have this really gravelly voice, as you can notice, but I'm an adult, so no big deal. I was actually born with it. From the time I was really little, my voice was very gravelly. Every time I met an adult, oh, are you sick? Oh, are you not feeling well? Everybody thought I didn't feel good. I was sick. I was hoarse. It was my voice. And so when I was really young, I grew to really not like it. It bothered me because it made me stand out. I'd be in a classroom as a student, as a young kid, and I'd be whispering in the back of the room, and the teacher would be up writing on the board, and without turning around, would say, "Brett, stop talking," because
Oh.
they could tell it was my voice because it was so deep that
Hmm.
even with a whisper. And so at that time, for years, it really bothered me, and I was so insecure about it. And then I don't even remember when or how I made the shift, but I started to realize it's one of the things that makes me unique. So instead of running from it and trying to jam myself into a little box of being the same as everybody else, why not embrace it? Why not be happy about it because it's something that makes me unique? And I think everybody needs to find those things that make them unique. Whether it's a personality trait, a physical characteristic, whatever, and embrace that, lean into it, and let it be who you are. Because who wants to be everybody else anyway? We're
Nobody.
better off to be ourselves and just be the best version of ourselves that we can.
Yeah.
So I love that advice, and I think it's something that we all could use more of, because we all could use to talk in a nicer way about ourselves most often. I mean, I think by default we all tend to be really hard on ourselves, and I think if we spend a little bit more time encouraging ourselves, like you said, like we would a good friend or a loved one, we wouldn't say those things to them, but we'll say them to ourselves. And I think we need to change that and start, speaking in a more positive way, so we internalize that and feel better about ourselves. So
Mm.
that's awesome advice. So why did you start the podcast? I know obviously we've led up to why you did all the things you've done, but why
Mm.
specifically a podcast?
Yeah, I started a podcast because yeah, I had that, I think it was 4 years ago. I just had that kind of void in my life. And I felt like I was in a place where I was just basically living a monotonous life. I was just basically working and chasing, progress and achievements in my career, and I was lacking behind in other areas, basically in life. And I felt like I had this passion deep inside of me. Not I felt like I knew that I know that I have that deep this very deep passion inside of me to speak with people, to have conversations with people. I have a lot of questions deep inside of me that I would love to ask people, and get their thoughts on, because I see myself as a student of life, basically. And so 4 years ago, I think actually 5 years ago, I got the idea, and I was like, no, I'm not going to start a podcast because of this reason. My voice is not so good enough. I don't have the time. I'm too shy. I can't speak with people. I'm going to keep on stammering, and nobody wants to listen because it's going to be horrible. Well, it kept on coming over and over. And I just started like a year afterwards, after I got the idea, just because I felt like it was time for me to learn from other people's experiences, and also I have this passion for helping my generation in any way I can. Like I have, maybe because I'm the firstborn of the family, I have like siblings and other people that I grew up with that always look up to me and ask for advice and say, "Oh, Toby, how do you do this? Toby, what do you do about this?" And a lot of those things I don't know about them, or maybe I learned them from someone else. So I was like, it would be nice to have a platform where I ask people questions and I share that lesson with people, with my friends, and they listen to it directly. Or I have those conversations, and when someone asks me about those questions, I was like, oh yeah, I had this conversation with this person. Maybe you could listen to it and check it out if it answers your questions, for example. So that was like the whole scenario, the whole thing that made me start the podcast at the end of the day, because I wanted to learn from people, from people's life journey and experiences, and I wanted to share that also with people out there.
It's great. A great, great reason. And by the way, your journey to start it is so common. I was in the same boat, in the sense that I had a lot of experience, but starting a podcast for entrepreneurs, my thought was, well, geez, I got to be an expert at everything in order to do this, because if they're looking to me for advice, and then I woke up one day and I said, this is what's holding me back. I don't need to be an expert. All I need to do is be honest, go through the journey, be authentic,
Hmm.
share, the same struggles, because that's what connects us. Is not when we see somebody who's so much better at everything or has everything that we want, and we say, "Oh wow, there's value in that too." But it's when someone is more like us and we recognize, "Hey, they made the same mistakes I did. Oh, they had the same roadblocks I had." Then people start to get the belief in themselves that they can do it. And initially, my first 9 months, I did all solo episodes. I wasn't doing interviews, so I believed I had to have all this knowledge, and then I realized I don't. I just need to be authentic about it, share my experience, what I do know, be honest about what I don't, and then start bringing people on and talk with them. because I learn something from everybody every time somebody comes on the show, and
Mm,
I have a blast doing it. And so why not learn together and have fun doing it? And I think so many people have an idea and they let something stop them because they've got those doubts or they've got those fears. So good for you that you took the plunge and did it. It took me a bit too, but I eventually got there and did it
good,
also. And I
good
think,
for you too.
um,
Good for you too. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of value in it. So,
I would like to know how was the sorry to interrupt.
yeah, no, go for it.
How was the first 9 months for you like? How was it like for you starting out?
Well, what I did was when I started, my commitment was this. I wasn't worried about any results
Mm,
because I already knew I'd already done the research and I already knew that if you get focused on the results of how many listeners or what are you doing with this or that or how many play, then you'll get discouraged because it takes a while to build it. So
mm,
what I did was the way I started it was I started with the commitment. I said, I'm doing this for a reason, right? The
mm,
reason I have for it is to share what I know, to give a voice to other people out there that might be struggling with an entrepreneurship or any kind of personal development thing in their life where they feel like they're alone, and let them know that they're not alone. Let them know that there's somebody else out there that's been through it, and let's sort of do this together. And the third thing is I said I'm just going to commit to doing a year's worth of episodes, and
mm.
I'm going all in. So I started doing a daily show 5 days a week, and I
Oh wow.
said I'm not going to stop for a year. I'll look up in a year, I'll evaluate and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? What do I got to fix? But I'm just going to do this for a year. And that's what I did. And so for a while, the early episodes, I'm sure they were terrible, but B, didn't get much traction or whatever else. But the more you do it, and I found this to be true in business, I find this to be true in just about anything in life, the more you do something, the better you get at it,
Mm,
especially if you pay attention to the results you're getting and then you adjust your approach.
mm,
And the thing is, a lot of people want all the answers or they want the perfection up front before they start.
mm.
That perfection, those answers only come from going through the process.
True.
And so that's, that was sort of the way that I went into it. So I wasn't worried about an outcome. But what about for you? I mean, did you feel like it was you were doing it as a passion project? Were you worried about results? How did you focus on it?
So for me, even I think up to now, it feels more of a passion project. Even though right now it has become much more bigger than it used to be 4 years ago. But starting out, it was like a passion project for me. I was not looking at making any profit from it. I was just so, happy or fascinated as a non-fascinated. I was just so delighted to be, having those conversations with people, like to be putting thoughts, to be putting ideas down and coming up with it. It feels so creative to me. It feels like something new, something relaxing and also impactful to people out there. So, and like you also, like, over the years and over time, always changing format, restructuring things. I didn't do a new episode every day. I was doing maybe or doing once a week or maybe twice a week, for example, changing format. But always looking at the statistics and saying, okay, what can I do to improve? Getting feedback from people, from friends initially in the first month. Like, I started out with like having interviews with my friends, like my neighbors around me that we are in the same community, and sharing that with people, getting their feedback. Okay, then analyzing that. I think that's like pausing and taking and reflecting, basically, like reflecting on that. Okay, what should I improve? Okay, they said you sound this way, or your mic was this way, or different feedback you get, basically, and then using that to improve. And yeah, it was the early stage for me was just a lot of learning journey and just being creative. It was a new word for me, learning all the old technicality behind making a podcast. So it was like it was a fun journey, I'd say.
It definitely is. There's a lot more to it than it initially seems, that's for sure. There's a lot of different rabbit holes you can go down when you're
Yeah.
trying to focus or perfect things, which is why it's important just to start and then make the adjustments after the fact because you'll know what adjustments to make that are going to get you the results and that matter. So
Hmm.
that's an amazing journey as well. So all right, I have one last question I have to ask because I think it's important, and I'm
Okay.
always interested to know what everybody's going to say, and that is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Oh, you said it already. Just do it. Just start. Just start it. Just start it. I mean, don't let the fear, don't let the doubt get in the way. You have the passion for it. You have the idea. You have the zeal for it. Just start it, and you'll make the changes along the way.
That's great advice, and I totally agree. You can plan all you want, but at the end of the day, once you start doing it, you're going to find things are a little bit different than the way you planned anyway. So you
Yeah.
got to be able to adjust on the fly. So thanks for that. All right, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again so much, Toby, for sharing all of your insights and great tips with us. Visit mirrortalkpodcast.com for great conversations about personal development, self improvement, finance, love, and life. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.